better for posterity too. For the kind of egoist I mean is a madman in a much more plausible sense than the mere harmless deficient, and to hand on the horrors of his anarchic and insatiable temperament is a much graver responsibility than to leave a mere inheritance of childishness. I would not arrest such tyrants, because I think that even moral tyranny in a few homes is better than a medical tyranny turning the state into a madhouse. I would not segregate them, because I respect a man's free will and his front door and his right to be tried by his peers. But since free will is believed by Eugenists no more than by Calvinists, since front doors are respected by Eugenists no more than by housebreakers, and since the habeas corpus is about as sacred to Eugenists as it would be to King John, why do not they bring light and peace into so many human homes by removing a demoniac from each of them? Why do not the promoters of the feeble-minded bill call at the many grand houses in town or country where such nightmares notoriously are? Why do they not knock at the door and take the bad squire away? Why do they not ring the bell and remove the dipsomaniac prize fighter? I do not know, and there is only one reason I can think of, which must remain a matter of speculation. When I was at school, the kind of boy who liked teasing half-wits was not the sort that stood up to bullies. That, however it may be, does not concern my argument. I mention the case of the strong-minded variety of the monstrous merely to give one out of the 100 cases of the instant divergence of individual opinions the moment we begin to discuss who is fit or unfit to propagate. If Dr. Saleeby and I were setting out on a segregating trip together, we should separate at the very door, and if he had 1,000 doctors with him, they would all go by different ways. Every one who has known as many kind and capable doctors as I have knows that the ablest and sanest of them have a tendency to possess some little hobby or half-discovery of their own, as that oranges are bad for children, or that trees are dangerous in gardens, or that many more people ought to wear spectacles. It is asking too much of human nature to expect them not to cherish such scraps of originality in a hard, dull, and often heroic trade. But the inevitable result of it, as exercised by the individual Salebys, would be that each man would have his favourite kind of idiot. Each doctor would be mad on his own madman. One would have his eye on devotional curates. Another would wander about collecting obstreperous majors. A third would be the terror of animal-loving spinsters, who would flee with all their cats and dogs before him. Short of sheer literal anarchy, therefore, it seems plain that the Eugenist must find some authority other than his own implied personality. He must once and for all learn the lesson which is hardest for him and me and for all our fallen race, the fact that he is only himself. We now pass from mere individual men, who obviously cannot be trusted, even if they are individual medical men, with such despotism over their neighbours, and we come to consider whether the Eugenists have at all clearly traced any more imaginal public authority, any apparatus of great experts or great examinations to which such risks of tyranny could be trusted. They are not very precise about this either. Indeed, the great difficulty I have throughout in considering what are the Eugenist proposals is that they do not seem to know themselves. Some philosophic attitude which I cannot myself connect with human reason seems to make them actually proud of the dimness of their definitions and the incompleteness of their plans. The Eugenic optimism seems to partake generally of the nature of that dazzled and confused confidence so common in private theatricals, that it will be all right on the night. They have all the ancient despotism, but none of the ancient dogmatism. If they are ready to reproduce the secrecies and cruelties of the Inquisition, at least we cannot accuse them of offending us with any of that close and complicated thought, that arid and exact logic, which narrowed the minds of the Middle Ages. They have discovered how to combine the hardening of the hearts with the sympathetic softening of the head. Nevertheless, there is one large, though vague, idea of the Eugenicists, which is an idea, and which we reach when we reach this problem of a more general supervision. It was best presented, perhaps, by the distinguished doctor who wrote the article on these matters in that composite book which Mr. Wells edited and called The Great State. He said that the doctor should no longer be a mere plasterer of paltry maladies, but should be, in his own words, the health adviser of the community. The same can be expressed with even more point and simplicity in the proverb that prevention is better than cure. Commenting on this, I said that it amounted to treating all people who are well as if they were ill. This the writer admitted to be true, only adding that every one is ill. To which I rejoined that if every one is ill, the health adviser is ill too, and therefore cannot know how to cure that minimum of illness. This is the fundamental fallacy in the whole business of preventive medicine. Prevention is not better than cure. Cutting off a man's head is not better than curing his headache. It is not even better than failing to cure it. It is the same if a man is in revolt, even a morbid revolt. Take the heart out of him by slavery, it is not better than leaving the heart in him, even if you leave it a broken heart. Prevention is not only not better than cure, prevention is even worse than disease. Prevention means being an invalid for life, with the extra exasperation of being quite well. I will ask God, but certainly not man, to prevent me in all my doings. But the decisive and discussable form of this is well summed up in that phrase about the health adviser of society. I am sure that those who speak thus have something in their minds larger and more illuminating than the other two propositions we have considered. They do not mean that all citizens should decide, which would mean merely the present vague and dubious balance. They do not mean that all medical men should decide, which would mean a much more unbalanced vision. They mean that a few men might be found who had a consistent scheme and vision of a healthy nation, as Napoleon had a consistent scheme and vision of an army. It is a cold anarchy to say that all men are to meddle in all men's marriages. It is cold anarchy to say that any doctor may seize and segregate any one he likes. But it is not anarchy to say that a few great hygienists might enclose or limit the life of all citizens, as nurses do with a family of children. It is not anarchy, it is tyranny. But tyranny is a workable thing. When we ask by what process such men could be certainly chosen, we are back again on the old dilemma of despotism, which means a man or democracy, which means men or aristocracy, which means favouritism. But as a vision the thing is plausible and even rational. It is rational, and it is wrong. It is wrong quite apart from the suggestion that an expert on health cannot be chosen. It is wrong because an expert on health cannot exist. An expert on disease can exist, for the very reason we have already considered in the case of madness. Because experts can only arise out of exceptional things. A parallel with any of the other learned professions will make the point plain. If I am prosecuted for trespass, I will ask my solicitor which of the local lanes I am forbidden to walk in. But if my solicitor, having gained my case, were so elated that he insisted on settling what lanes I should walk in, if he asked me to let him map out all of my country walks, because he was the perambulatory adviser of the community, then that solicitor would solicit in vain. If he will insist on walking behind me through woodland ways, pointing out with his walking stick likely avenues and attractive short cuts, I shall turn on him with passion, saying, "Sir, I pay you to know one particular puzzle in Latin and Norman French, which they call the law of England. And you do know the law of England. I have never had any earthly reason to suppose that you know England. If you did, you would leave a man alone when he was looking at it. As are the limits of the lawyer's special knowledge about walking, so are the limits of the doctor's. If I fall over the stump of a tree and break my leg, as is likely enough, I shall say to the lawyer, 'Please go and fetch the doctor.' I shall do it because the doctor really has a larger knowledge of a narrower area. There are only a certain number of ways in which a leg can be broken. I know none of them, and he knows all of them. There is such a thing as being a specialist in broken legs. There is